Hey friends, it's Romania Black, and are you ready for a fun time with episode 86, episode 4 of 86? Because when we last left off, I don't think a fun time was being had by Lena. No, Vladilena was not having a great time at all, but was getting a much needed reality check by Laughing Fox after we've lost dear Kaya in this last episode, which is really sad. I like Kaya's character a lot, Kirschblut. We're going to talk about that name and lots of other things. But yeah, I'm really sad that she's dead. The ending of last episode was really good, really powerful. Just seeing Lena just get it handed to her, how she's being idealistic, but she's not the saint that maybe she thinks she is. So, but yeah. So I'm excited for this episode. I do want to talk about a couple things, mainly in the comments, and also some things that as I went back, here's my problem. I had like nearly an hour's worth of discussion last episode, and then as I started editing, I was like, I didn't talk about this, or I didn't talk about that, and so I have a theory that, and a feeling that you all will be pointing out things that I miss in your comments, which you're fine, as long as you talk about things that have happened in the episode prior that I've already seen. That's okay. That's not a spoiler because I just watched it. I just didn't get a chance to talk about it or address it. But I'm looking forward to that. But also I have a feeling that as I go through and edit, I'm going to be like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And that's how this series goes, right? So let's talk about some of those things. First of all, Sheen has been reading during this episode. The last episode or two, we couldn't really see what the title of the novel he was reading was, but this last episode we did get the title, and it's All is Quiet on the Western Front. All Quiet on the Western Front, or the German, I can't speak German, but Im Westen nichts Neues. Hopefully I said that right, which means nothing new in the West, is a novel by Erich Maria Remarque, a German veteran of World War I. So the book describes German soldiers' extreme physical and mental trauma during the war, as well as their detachment from civilian life felt by many upon returning home from the war. So imagine we just got done talking about Sheen getting done with their term of service and being a civilian again, and Sheen is reading a book about how the main character has trouble trying to reconcile with the fact that they're going to be done with the war and how do they go back to civilian life. So very interesting. However, I won't spoil the entire ending of the book for you. I will say that the main character loses a lot of friends along the way, which kind of mirrors the situation in 86. So it makes sense that Sheen is reading the book. And then basically the main character feels that they have no aims left in life and that the generation being left with will be different and misunderstood. I can't imagine how that would relate to this last episode. So basically what I need to do is pay attention to which novels are being referenced in this story, because the context of those novels may be paralleling or representing the state that the characters are in that particular episode or in the series as a whole. But yeah, I've not read All Quiet on the Western Front, but I know of it, and when I saw it in the editing, I was like, oh, that's the book. And so yeah, I'm not going to spoil the ending of it. Go look it up. But yeah, I thought it was a very appropriate novel given what our last episode was about. It has also been pointed out by multiple people that Kaya, when she was playing the card game, drew the Joker hand that had the scythe, and that's the card she ended up with. She lost the game, which should have been a sign that, foreshadowing that she was going to die. Also, I didn't realize that her name was Kirschblut at the very beginning, so by the end when she did die, I was like, oh, well, there we go. There we go. Additionally, behind... in the thumbnail for episode 3, behind Kaya was a stopwatch symbol, which could have, foreshadowed that she was running out of time, and also foreshadowed her death. Nuclear Gandhi talks about the MIA-4 juggernauts are referencing the MIA-4 Abrams, which is a U.S. battle tank. So I thought that was pretty interesting to know that reference. That's a fun time. K.A. points out some voice actors. Lena's voice actress is Karine from Buddy Daddies. Fun time, but this is also her first major role as a main character heroine. I'm like, that's fun. She's doing a great job so far. I like her voice actress. Sheen's voice actor, I was like, oh, Sheen's voice actor is Sigma from Bungo Stray Dogs. I was like, what a different character. As well as Ko from Hanago-kun. I can kind of hear the Ko, which is really fun. And then Sing from Banana Fish. And I was like, oh my gosh. And Imamura from Blue Lock. And then Annette's voice actress is a rookie VA that has been a minor character in the Japanese dub of Link Click. So Lots of rookie VAs. I kind of like that we have this new up-and-coming generation of voice actors. It's a lot of fun times. Whoosh and Sweet Band noted in episode 2 that when Lena is talking to Annette, she wants Lena to not get too... Annette does not want Lena to get too attached to her fellow soldiers. And then as she's saying that, we see one of the lapels from Lena's jacket fall down. So like with the flower petals in the first couple episodes and now with the jacket, I feel like Lena's nationality and her, not nationality, but her nationalism and, you know, pride in her own country is slowly being stripped away as she's realizing just kind of how maybe awful her country is being to these people that she's slowly caring about. My prediction is by the end of this series, she's going to end up on the same side of the battlefield as all the 86, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Nuclear Gandhi also said in episode 2 that if you compare episode 2 to episode 3, we're slowly seeing how Lena's, you know, idealistic views are being challenged, and she's realizing the inequality and the prejudice in the system. Like in episode 2, she said, well, even apart, we all look at the same stars. Like, we're all equal no matter what. Haha, sunshine and rainbows. And then in episode 3, Lena reveals that she can't see the same stars that they can. So proving that that idealistic thing she was telling them is not actually true. And she's slowly realizing that inequality. So fun times. And my dogs don't care if I'm talking about 86. They just want me to throw this stupid toy. So anyway, finally, we have Ogami 7661 saying that Legion identifies a lot of their different soldiers in German terms. We have Amis, which is ant, Graulf, which is gray wolf. I knew that one. Lau, which is lion. Did not know that one. Eintagsflige, which is mayfly. And then Kirschblut is cherry blossom, which just totally off the wall. I watch a lot of Great British Baking Show on my off time, and they use kirsch a lot in a lot of the recipes. And I've been trying to figure out what the hell kirsch is, and I'm like, oh, it's cherry liqueur. Oh, it's cherry kirsch. So look at me. I'm learning different languages. I'm basically bilingual now. No, but yeah. I'm super excited for this episode to see what we get. I hope you all are too. So we're not going to waste any more time. I'm going to tell my beautiful dogs, whom I love dearly, to go lay down. They probably won't. But in any case, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right in and see what we get this week. And so we are going to start episode 4 of 86. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Well, that was a lovely episode. I am really happy that we had some downtime this week for this episode, because after the intensity of episodes 1, 2, and 3, I'm not going to lie, walking into this episode, I was like, here we go. And this episode was frustrating on many levels. It was very frustrating because I am feeling Lena's struggle. It's just, Lena's struggle, I am viscerally feeling it, and I was getting antsy and like felt like my skin crawling on her behalf many times during this episode, but I'm glad that in the end, Lena is a stubborn woman. I'm like, yes, Lena, thank you, Vladilena, for being stubborn as all get out and not saying no, because it seems there's lots of assumptions, there's lots of things. We're getting these new pieces of information that she knows Sheen's brother. Now, brother by blood or brother by, being raised by him? That is the question. But she knows his brother, and there's something to be said about that. So, and he just had like you know personally who my brother is. Interesting. Now, the question is going to be, was that it seemed like they had a good relationship in the brief flashes that we got, and he was kind of fondly remembering his brother. But is that the brother's voice that we're waiting for? We need to go through this episode, because on the surface, this episode looks like it's pretty cut and dry, straightforward. There wouldn't be a lot to talk about. But actually, I think that there is a lot to talk about. So we need to talk about this. I'm glad that we just... Theo. I'm going to get Theo's name at some point. I'm going to get it. Sure. Going to get Theo's name one way or another. So we'll just put up, obviously, Sheen. I know it's Shanae. He is the Undertaker. And I'm not going to do their full names on here just for the sake of writing, but we have Theo Rika. He is Laughing Fox. And something that we find out about Laughing Fox is that he's actually taken that moniker from an Alba citizen who stayed and fought with them. Who stayed and fought and didn't go back to his own people. And so I feel like there's in some ways, I feel like Theo's outburst is not only because he liked Kaya a lot, and so he not only lost a comrade, but he lost one he had like a deeper connection to, but it's also the fact that because he's taken the moniker from an Alban person and claimed it as his own and had connections with that person from Alba that stayed behind, I feel like maybe thinks that Lena is kind of insulting the Fox Commander's memory by saying like, hey, this guy, he was from Alba. He left his comfy, cozy home and came on the sidelines and fought alongside us and died protecting us. He was actually in the trenches with us. He knows what it was like. And you just sitting in your cozy little chair, like playing like a video game of us dying, that's insulting to his memory and the sacrifice that he made to let us be here right now. So it adds an extra layer of context as we go through the episode of why Laughing Fox is so viscerally like reacting to Lena. And again, it's the idea that Lena didn't even think about it, right? But now she is thinking about it. And I think it speaks volumes for Lena's character that she is trying to be proactive and figure out what can I do. And we're going to talk about it in this episode. But yeah, I really like that the button pops off and she ends up leaving the conversation after Raiden tells her to kill the synchronization. Raiden is interesting. So Raiden is werewolf. Raiden, we're going to be on here is werewolf. He is a very interesting character in all this because he doesn't seem to necessarily... He has this kind of cold view of Lena. I don't think he finds her infuriating. I don't think he finds her frustrating like Laughing Fox, like Theo does. But I think that Raiden is like, you are not cut out to be a handler. This is not going to end well. I think Raiden believes that maybe she's going to become emotionally caught up in all of this. And he's like, you have a good heart. You need to get out while you still can. And of course, Lena is stubborn. She's not going to do that. But he tries to like talk her out of it that she needs to go. It almost seems like in some ways though that Raiden kind of like not coddles, but kind of like wants to like protect her from all that's going on in his own kind of cold and clinical way. But then on the other hand, he's like been with Sheen so long, and Sheen and Lena are actually kind of similar. So, interesting. At least similar in their morals. But yeah, I like that we see everybody. Oh my gosh, you see everybody's reaction. You see Daya. We don't see one person with their back turned to us. We don't see their reaction. We see Daya. We see Anju. We see Haruto. We see Karino. We see another one of the girls. And then somebody is like gripping their hands incredibly hard, like they're praying. And then Sheen is just sitting there. And then it like goes out. But yeah, and God, the whole thing of them seeing like the crash site and then hearing her say, I don't want to die. And then it just shows them just boop, just booting her away. And that's it. Like it just seems like such a simple thing. Like the little Legion thing just went boop and that was it. And it was over. Like just showing how fleeting it is, right? And then, I love the graphic of Theo grabbing his hair and the animation of him just like gripping his hair like he's so upset and frustrated. And he's like, Kaya, I did the same thing as the white pigs. Untainted your death. It's interesting that they call the people behind the walls the white pigs. And then, you know, you have the contrast. They're calling each other pigs, right? And what's so fascinating about that moment is he says he is self-aware enough that to realize that he got angry and let that anger resonate onto someone the same way that the people within the wall let their anger resonate on the 86, or rather their indifference, however you want to look at it. But the funny thing about that moment is he says that, but he still calls them the white pigs. So there is like a little bit of, he doesn't even realize that he's doing the same thing that Lena's been doing, that he's getting onto Lena for doing. And it's just like, it's so ingrained at this point. It's ingrained to the people on the wall that the 86 are inhuman. It's ingrained to the people of the 86 that the people inside the walls are inhuman. So it's just like, it is a very difficult thing to break that up. And that's very realistic, right? That's a very realistic thing to worry about and to deal with. So the only thing about this OP that I want to point out is that there's someone there in the shadows. I'm wondering, and it looks like they have glasses. So maybe that's the brother, possibly. And then at the very end, we see Fido. At the very end, we see people in the field. And it didn't just hit me until now, but now there's people in the field. We see Kaya next to somebody with blonde hair that's sitting up there, somebody with dreadlocks, and another girl. So it's possible that they're all people that have slowly been dying. So I'm like, oh no, it's like as the series goes on and people die, is that field of poppies just gonna get like more and more dense? No. And they're all like, they're not poppies, they're like they're flowers, right? Okay. And we just see, I feel like the images of this OP, we're gonna have to go over and over again, right? But yeah, and we see the little spider lilies slowly wilt. Okay, so we go back to Sheen and the cat. He's still reading All Quiet on the Western Front, and it's the very next day. And what's so fascinating to me is like all these characters. Okay, so the character that had their back turned during the moment where she got off and they didn't want to talk to her, that's the kid with the black hair. I feel like we're gonna get to know them as the story goes on. The one that's playing basketball against Haruto. What's so crazy is like, to them, to the 86, like someone dying is just another day for the Survey Corps, just another day on the job. And so they don't really have time to sit there and wallow in grief about it. They just move on because they don't have a choice. If they don't move on, they're going to be the next ones to die if their heads aren't clear and they're not thinking about whatever their objective might be for that day. So they just don't have time to sit there and wallow about it, right? And it almost seems like a pact amongst themselves that they're not going to let the deaths of their comrades stop them from enjoying what little time they have potentially in this world. So it's so incredible to see them just trying to live out their lives. And of course, Theo is distracted. Theo's thinking about Kai, he's thinking about what he said. He seems like he regrets the way that he said it. I like that Sheen, by the end of this episode, reminds Theo, he's like, let me guess, you don't regret what you said, just the way in which you said it. And to Theo, yeah, he's like, I wish I hadn't yelled it and just been outright angry. I wish I just told her kind of like what Kaya would have done. Kaya would have calmly explained, this is why we think the things that we do. But to Theo, acting out in anger is exactly what someone inside the walls would do, and that's why he kind of feels bad about it. I do love the visualization where the not so subtle symbolism of the image of the woman from the Republic pointing the sword at Theo, not so subtle at all, right? Not subtle at all. And then as they're saying next, don't screw it up. I'm like, is that foreshadowing that Theo's going to die? I hope not. I want Theo to live longer. And I want Theo and Karina, of the characters that we have Karina. Let me see here. We have Karina. We have Anju Emma. I like Anju Emma as her name, her full name. And she's Snow Wolf, right? And then we also have, I feel like there's a couple others. We'll get to them though. I want Karina and Theo to kind of be the ones to come around to Lena, because I think that they're the ones, they're like the male-female equivalent that have to come around to Lena by the end of the series. And maybe not. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will never come around to her. Who knows? But yeah, they're all just hanging out there. We see Theo sketching and they're all just, I feel like when they're inside, everything in this room is kind of, it's not the same as it was the day before, right? The day or two before, I guess the 13th, so 3 days prior, they were all playing cards. It was more lively. Everybody was chit-chatting and talking around inside. Here, when they go inside, the blinds are drawn. It feels like a wake. The outside, when they were playing, they were, just soaking it up. But once they go inside and they sit down in this atmosphere where 3 days prior they were playing with Kaya and she's gone now, it feels like there's a noticeable absence. And the lights turned off and it's just very somber. Like at this point, they recognize that another one of their members is no longer there, and it's one less voice in the room, right? And so meanwhile, Theo's trying to get the cat off the table and try and tell the cat to quit moving around. And they notice that the image they're drawing is like, that's a fox, not a cat, and it's scary. It's not laughing. You're supposed to be laughing, fox. And he's like, shut up. And so Karina's like, well, are you bothered by what you said to that woman? And then he's like, no. And they try to cheer him up. It's really cute. They all try to make him feel better. I like also that Daya's in the corner, like, he's blushing. He's like, oh, should you guys be rough handling him? What about me? And Haruto's like, yes. Yeah, Haruto. That's another one. We have Daya. I think, is Black Dog. And then we have Haruto in there as well. But yeah, that's really funny. Again, we've seen the two other characters. One is like sandy blonde hair and one is dark hair. And so the way that the button came off, he's like, it always does just, also the way he always has just one button done. And as Anju is fixing the button. Anju's kind of like, she's the seamstress. She seems to be the one to patch things up and put things together of the group, which might be, and earlier she's kind of like, in the episode when they were at the lake bathing, she's kind of the one to like tie them all together. So that seems to be Anju's job. I don't know why. Don't ask me why, but for some reason, Anju, all I can think of is if you've ever seen the musical Chicago, she reminds me of I don't know what nationality the one, I don't think it's Hungarian, but she's the woman in the Cell Block Tango. She's the woman in the women's prison that ends up being called guilty because the people in the town officers can't understand what she says, so they scapegoat her into being the one that's guilty. For some reason, Anju reminds me of her, and I cannot explain to you why, but every time I see her, I have Cell Block Tango playing in my head, and I see, like I just have that playing over and over again. Lip shits. I cannot explain it to you, but every time I've seen her, I suddenly think of Cell Block Tango. It is baffling to me. But yeah, what the button reminded me of is the Japanese tradition where when you graduate, you take a button off and you give it to someone that you like. That's what I thought of when they were repairing the button on his jacket, because as he's talking about Lena being the pig and kind of defending Kaya, that's when the button pops off. So, and it almost seems like the girls are acknowledging that Theo had something for her. And even Anju's like, it's really nice that you had someone that you cared about to that capacity in this world, because we don't always get so lucky. What we saw yesterday wasn't like you, but it reminded me of the Fox Commander. So, okay, we have these figures, right? We have the Fox Commander, who is the man from Alba that stayed behind and died for Theo's unit. So we have him. He's one of the mysterious ghosts. There's lots of ghost characters in this series that we hear about them in passing. We know about them, but they're just like these spiritual vessels at this point. And I love the little head pat that Theo gets from Daya. I always feel like Daya and Theo are brothers. They kind of look similar. They have similar hair colors. Maybe they're not related, but they seem like brothers almost. And Anju says, we're all jealous that you met someone like that. Someone that will always be important to you. And I thought for a second it was referring to Kaya, but it could also be referring to the Fox Commander, that Theo has met multiple people that he really has this strong connection to, right? And Anju's like, it was never like that for me. So I'm curious what Anju's past is and what we're going to get there. But they fixed the button. And so meanwhile, the mechanic is not happy with Sheen. They keep talking about these shipments that are going to come. The shipments have not arrived yet, but they keep talking about how we can't break anything else until the shipments get here. But the shipments, as far as I can see, are not showing up. So, interesting. And yeah, Fido goes and gets the piece of Kirschblut for him to have. And so then him and Sheen have the conversation about what he said. And then Theo says, do you think the Fox Commander would have said that to the handler? At first I thought he was calling out Sheen and saying, what would you have said to her? But then I'm like, well, there's no reason to ask that because Sheen didn't say anything. And so then Sheen replies, oh, well, if you're talking about the Fox Commander, would he have gotten mad? And he says, it doesn't matter. He says, the white pig who thinks she's a saint is probably never going to use the parade again. I'm like, you don't really know Lena that well. None of y'all do. I'm like, Lena, I love how stubborn Lena is. Lena is not going to give up. She is determined. She is like, no, you have planted an idea in her head and she's going to see it through. And we're going to talk about that because I think that her father is the big reason why. And he's like, your commander would not have said that. That's what you think, isn't it? And he's like pulling at the button again. I'm like, she just fixed that. Don't get it messed up. So then we cut back to Lena's perspective. Real name is the episode. And the flower is back in the vase, right? There's a flower back in the vase. Like she's taken a step back, right? Or how do we view the flower in the vase? Do we view the flower in the vase as if she was taking a step towards originally abandoning her nationality and she was abandoning her flower and everything, and this made her take a step back? Do we view it that way? Or do we view it as she's like, okay, well, what do I do now? Like, I need, it almost seems like it could be, you could view it different ways. You could view it as she's maybe like regressed a little bit back and like kind of retracted back into her shell, back inside the walls after this confrontation, and that's why the flower is back. You could take it as she needed some kind of comfort after that moment, so she got the flower. Or you could take it as she's starting anew and realizing, okay, how I was doing things not working. I need to start anew and figure out what to do, right? Because this is also the next day where she's like, what do I do? And she salutes the flower, you know, back. It looks like everything kind of seems like it's going back to the way it was. She's got the books back on her desk like it was, and she's saluting the flower like she was. Like she's starting to regress back a little bit to how she was before. And so Annette, let's talk about Annette. So Annette is the best friend, right? The best friend that is worried for Lena. We're going to talk about Annette, and we're also going to talk about the uncle. But Annette's whole thing is that you have to accept that they are in different worlds. There are things that both of them say in this episode that I sort of agree with, but then there are things they say that I'm fundamentally like, no. Stop. And so this episode was very frustrating because they would say something and I'd be like, oh, well, I kind of see what you're saying. But then they would say something else and I'm like, I am totally against that. And I'm glad that Lena ends up kind of not going along with what all they were saying. Also, you could say it's flan. You could say it's creme caramels, whatever. Puddings. No, thank you. Not having it. She says we have to accept that we live in our own world. Right? And she gives her the 2 cups. And Lena's like, that's not acceptable. She's like, I can't forgive myself if I just acted like we're in a different world than them and just treat it as if, you know, there's nothing we can do. And so then Annette says, well, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the 86th district and fight them? I think by the end of the story, she's going to. I think that if her father had a way to get there, I feel by the end of this, she's going to go to the 86th district and fight alongside them. I really think she's going to. I think that's going to be something that happens. And I won't be surprised if the uncle sends her there by the end of this. I don't trust the uncle. The uncle's giving me Uncle Scar vibes. I don't trust him. I will talk about him. But I would not be surprised if by the end of this series, he sends her to the battlefield being like, well, this is what you wanted. And just be like your dad and die on the battlefield. And she's going to go along with them. But, and I do appreciate that Annette is, she wants Lena to quit and join the research department because she's concerned about her. And I do empathize a little bit with Annette that she's like, you're my friend, my best friend. I don't want you to keep worrying about this. Join the research department. Forget all of that. Like you live in a different world. I do agree that Annette is smart to point out that, you know, they are right. We are in 2 different worlds. We can't ignore that fact. But Annette's whole thing is Annette wants to run away. Annette seems to want to run away and isolate from the problem. what is ironic about all of this is that she's isolating from the problem within the very department that is like running the problem, right? She's with the Parade department. So the irony of all ironies is that she's running from the problem by isolating at the very center of it, which is fascinating to me. I'm like, yes. But she's like, well, what do you think you're going to do? So instead, Annette says, you need to spoil yourself. You need to take advantage of the luxuries and privilege you have. Now, I don't think that Annette means it this way, but I do hope that by the end of this series as well, I do hope that Lena takes a page from Annette and she's like, you're right. I do have all this privilege. I do have all these resources. Why am I not taking advantage of them? And then Annette will be like, I didn't mean it that way, you know? But I think she's right. I think Annette's like, you know, you should not take for granted what's been given to you, which Lena has a little bit throughout this series so far. But I don't think that Annette's like, she's like, I made too much pudding. You should enjoy yourself. And Lena's like, I'm not in the mood for this. And she's like, that's not healthy. She's like, the world is a wonderful place where you could sneak in a pudding snack in the middle of the day. What's interesting here is Annette is like saying, you know, we have these luxuries, we have this lifestyle that we can take advantage of. Why don't we? What's the point of having all this if we don't enjoy it? And Lena's like, well, that's all fine and dandy, but there are people I'm working with that are dying. That what do I do to deserve this pudding? And so then Annette says, why is it such a big deal that you didn't ask for their names? You don't need to know them. You're not going to meet them. You're not going to be their friends. So Annette, we have the idea that your names are ties to your identity. Your identity and your pride as a person. And by not knowing, you are distancing. You're distancing from humanity. You're not knowing their names so that you don't have to treat them as humans. And Sheen kind of says that too. He's like, you know, the reason why the processor files are locked away, the reason why you're not supposed to learn our names, why we go by code names, is to create that desensitization barrier to where if we die, you're not going to feel bad about it. And Lena's kind of like, well, that may be true, but I shouldn't have that, you know, why do I get the privilege of walking away at the end of the battle not knowing how you all felt and not having that connection with you all? Why do I have to have that privilege, but you guys don't get that? So, but Annette's like, you're never going to meet him. And I'm like, liar. I think she's going to meet him by the end, or at least Sheen. And she says, well, that's your name, Henrietta Primrose. I know your name and we're friends. She's like, I want to know who they are. I mean, Lena wants to become, maybe not necessarily friends, but she wants to know them on a human-to-human basis. If she doesn't know their names, how can they be human to her? And Annette's like, you and the 86 aren't friends. You're overthinking this. And Lena's like, well, we're all human. And then, you know, Annette says, if you really thought that, you would have asked their names right away. And that just shows us as the audience, like how deep the indoctrination has been ingrained. Like the fact that you didn't ask to begin with, you asked the cat's name before their names, says a lot. And Annette kind of points that out. And Lena's like, well, I'm not satisfied with that. And she says, you need to stop getting closer to them. And she's like, why are you so set against them? And that's when this part I really liked. Annette said, there's nothing I can do. There's pudding here and not there. This is really interesting because Annette is suggesting that she has this sense of powerlessness. Which again, you're isolated and powerless at the center of all the power. Isn't that crazy? But because she's powerless, she's like, do I drive myself crazy? Do I drive myself crazy with how I can help? Or do I just run away and forget it? I get why Annette is like that, and I get why she wants Lena to not get involved because she doesn't want Lena to end up in a, you know, an unhealthy place. But I'm also like, that's wrong, you know? It's what's so wrong about it is that you are not necessarily powerless. You are like the chief of research here. You could do something. But then again, Annette, even if she's a chief of research, there's the military over her. She may not be able to do anything. So she's like, because I have no power in this situation, in reality, all I can do is either let it drive me crazy or just ignore it and live out my life and take advantage of the things that they don't have in their place. Not saying that's right. And I feel like Lena is kind of in a position of power, so she can do something. But it explains Annette's actions and why she's like that. And she's like, we are different from them in every way. So any way we get involved just leads to us having regrets. Yeah, this whole scene like lays out Annette's entire view on the entire situation. Lena's not saying they're different in terms of, oh, the 86 are pig people and we're not. She's not saying that. She's like, we live in a world of privilege and prosperity and do not have to fight wars. They're stuck in a never-ending war. So we can't possibly relate. So why even bother? It's kind of her mentality. I don't agree with it, but it makes a lot more sense for her character now and why she's so against Lena getting involved. And she's like, just quit being a handler and come to the lab. But Lena's like, no. Lena is Michael Scott from The Office, where she's like, I'm just going to do it harder. I'm just going to be a handler even harder. And I respect that, because that gif of Michael Scott saying, I'm just going to do it harder, is me on a daily basis. So me and Lena, we're tight. We're like this. I am with you, girl. I am all about you. You just keep doing what you got to do, girl. I'm here for you. But yeah, and then that's when Annette says you should listen when your best friend gives you advice. And you can tell she's very kind of concerned there, but Vladilena Melise, she didn't touch the caramel creme. So then she's like, she sees outside, she has this flashback of her father. Let's go to the battlefield and see everything that's happening. So we have her father with, we'll get his name in a minute. And the idea that he took her to the battlefield to see. I love that. I mean, I'm not advocating for fathers to take their children into the middle of a war zone. That is a bit reckless and dangerous, like the uncle points out. However, I think that it compares a lot to, there's a character in Attack on Titan. Not going to spoil it in case if you've not watched that show, but you should if you watch this one. But in Attack on Titan, there's a character who is a general, and they have a constant regret that the people of their country do not understand what war is like. They lament constantly throughout the story that the people in his own country need to understand what war is like and need to fight in those wars so they gain an appreciation of what the soldiers have to go through so that they will stop the wars and not be a part of them anymore. Because kind of like Annette in that situation with the flan or the creme caramels or whatever, it's this idea that if you are distanced from the fighting, it is so easy for you to overlook it. It's so easy for you to distance. It's so easy for you to say, oh, well, what can we do? Because you're not actually a part of the war zone. If you're on the trenches, you might not want to ever start a war again because you're like, this was hell. Let's not do that. But if you're from a position where you're on a comfy couch or in like a gaming chair and you are separated from the violence, then it does not impact you or make you not want to have the war because you don't understand what that feels like. So in Attack on Titan, there's a character that wants the people of his country to be on the battlefield so they can see the carnage, so that they will be motivated to stop it and not continue the war in the future. That's their motivation. And it seems like the dad is kind of like that. He wants Lena to see the war up close so she will understand what it is these people are doing, and so that she will fundamentally want to oppose it in the future. It seems to have been very effective. It seems to have been very effective because he takes her to the battlefield. He takes her outside the wall, it looks like, and he got in the chopper. And she's like, we're at war, right, Father? I like that it seemed like he just picked her up from Sunday school, like with her little purse, was like, get in the helicopter, dear, we're going on a field trip, and then took her into a war zone, which is fascinating to me. We're doing something even worse. So it seems like he knew about the project and was not for it. Also, let it be known that Lena's family has genetically beautiful hair. Love it. And he says, yes, We have to bring this to an end. So he went, and we kind of see the internment camps, right? We get our first look at them. They look mysteriously similar to an internment camp you might see in a World War II textbook, perhaps, or in many textbooks. It doesn't have to be World War II. That's a sad thing. It could be many battles. I think of World War II because that's what I grew up in our history books seeing, especially in relation to the Holocaust and things like that. But I'm sure, depending on where you are from, you may have seen a history book from another period of time, from another war, with very similar internment camps. It's just, unfortunately, history repeating itself. But yeah, we see the exact, they look like just giant livestock buildings is honestly what they look like. And they go through that and see that, and he's like, quickly, can you take us a little past the front line base? And they're like, yes, Colonel. So he was a colonel. And then we cut to, obviously they got shot out of the sky, probably by Legion. I love that shot of him, when he has her in his arms, and she doesn't know what's going on because she's just a kid, but he's holding her in his arms, like he's protecting her. That's a really, really good shot. And she just doesn't understand. And then it shows her on the ground. Okay, I wanted to see what that shot was. There was a shot of they got fired out of the sky. There was him protecting her. There was her on the ground. There was a Legion soldier, and then there was a man, it looked like the pilot was firing something at the Legion soldier, and then it turned to her, and she backed up. So something saved her from the Legion attack. We don't know what. Maybe it was the red-haired individual that's Sheen's brother. Did Sheen's brother save them? I don't know. We don't quite know. But we get the uncle showing up. I don't trust the uncle any further than I could throw him. I just don't. It just gives me Mufasa Scar vibes. I just don't get it. Not having him so far. He's got the evil uncle syndrome. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I doubt it. Also, there's him with his hand over her head as we see the brother that died in the shadows. He's like, I can't forget it. The last place my father took me, the battlefield in District 86. So he died there after, either on the battlefield or shortly thereafter. That was the final mission he had. And she's like, I'm sad about what happened to him, but I'm glad that I could see it. And the uncle's like, well, you're glad? What, are you getting ideas or something? She's like, because I saw it with my own eyes, I could learn the truth about this country. And I was able to hold the ideals that the Republic threw away. There is a little bit of, I'm not saying self-righteousness that Lena has, but it's a little shade of self-righteousness. Just a little bit. It's not, I feel like Laughing Fox, or AKA Theo, called it out on her last week to be like, you're being a little self-righteous when, etc., etc. And she's kind of a little bit this way towards her uncle, which I'm like, girl, but she's a kid. I mean, she's a young adult, right? But the uncle talks about ideals. Because Lena is all about how she wanted to hold onto the ideals thanks to what her father showed her that the country threw away. And her uncle's like, okay, let's talk about this. And so he says, Vaclav was a kind man who wanted to make the Republic a better place. So Vaclav is the dad. And he said that he was an idealistic man. There are some things the uncle says that I'm curious about that seem maybe a little bit contradictory to what we've seen. So he says he was a kind man who wanted to make the Republic a better place. But then he says, I'm sure he was a good father and a good husband, but not as good as I could be. And then he's like, that's why he decided to teach you the truth about this country. As a friend, I think it's a shame that an enemy attack took from us a man with a strong sense of justice. He says as a friend, right? But he's the brother, isn't he? So he talks about his strong sense of justice. What's interesting is that what the uncle says about the father, Vaclav, is kind of like one of those things where only if you're related to somebody can you really talk trash about them. He says, well, as a friend, he was a great man, a good colonel, a kind husband, blah, blah, blah. As his brother, let me say this about my feelings about him. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like you don't trash talk other people's family, but family tend to trash talk each other. So it's kind of one of those moments. He's like, he's my brother, so I can say this. Just want to put it out there. There's something he didn't realize. And Lena's like, what? And he talks about that just like the rest of the public, he wasn't doing anything more than watching. So this is interesting. So he says about him, he says that all he did was watch. Which I'm like, he did take Lena onto the battlefield. He was a colonel, so he did have more access than most people did. So is the uncle suggesting that Vaclav was kind of like how Lena was being in the last few episodes and just was these hollow words of idealism that didn't have any backing to them? That seems to be what he's suggesting. He's like, he didn't really do anything. And Lena's like, excuse me, no matter how much you talk about equality, it's not you who is fighting. He felt subconsciously that only the 86 die on the battlefield. So I'm like, he's like, ideals are nothing without action. And I did agree with a little bit with what the uncle said, was like, you know, we're not the ones fighting these battles. So it's the 86 that are fighting the battle. So, you know, what right do we have to spout out about ideals? He's like, he was able to take you onto the battlefield with him and do something so reckless because of his ideals, because he had that privilege and power, but he had the privilege and power to take his daughter onto the battlefield, but he didn't do anything to actively help the 86, is what the uncle is saying. Now, whether that is true or not, I don't know. We don't get to know that yet. That we're just getting from the uncle's perspective, right? And then he says it proves his ignorance and stupidity. He's like, I don't want you to be like him. And the thing about it is, no matter what we find out about the dad, no matter what information we get about Vaclav and what he did, I don't think that if the uncle is suggesting that Vaclav was just a man of ideals and he was only doing such and such and not taking any real action, and he doesn't want Lena to be like this, I think Lena is going to go further. I think what he was trying to do is dissuade Lena, being like, well, don't be idealistic, so just give up on trying to solve a solutionless problem. He's like, look, there's no way to solve the problem. It's too late. This is the system that we have. It's not going to change. So quit trying to be like him, be idealistic, and just settle for the fact that it's not going to change. And then you won't be suffering like he suffered. And of course, he doesn't realize Lena's like, I'm not giving up. And he looks back at her. I like that he kind of looks back at her like he's going to try to persuade her. And he's like, that's enough. You're doing a good job. And he's like, it's my responsibility for giving you this tough unit to deal with. I thought for a second he was going to try to take the unit away from her. And I was like, no. I'm like, don't do that. But he doesn't end up taking it away from her. Instead, he's like, you know, if it's too much for you, it's fine. And he asks her what the flag stands for. And she says that it stands for freedom, equality, brotherhood, justice, and nobility. And she's like, what are you? And he says, are you upholding that? Are you? He's like, look at the real world. The beautiful things are nowhere to be found in the Republic. So yeah, and this, when the uncle said that, I was like, okay. So he's saying the idea of freedom, brotherhood, equality, nobility, justice. He's like, those are pretty hollow right now. Which I agree with. They're pretty hollow words. He's like, none of that is happening right now. So how are you upholding things that don't exist in the current state of things? You're too focused on seeking ideals from others and yourself. Which he's not exactly wrong. He's like, if you just focus on ideals, that's not enough. And he says because they are unattainable. Seeking them when you know they're impossible is foolish. This is why it's so frustrating, because what's so frustrating about it is that I do agree with the uncle that right now the Republic is not holding up the five merits that its flag seems to want to represent. I do agree with him that they're not being held up. And I do agree with him that you cannot just have ideals without action. Agree with him on those fronts. But then he's like, it's impossible. When he says it is impossible to seek this, and we see like the beer bottles and the cigarettes and stuff, he's like, you're not going to change the minds of all these men, little lady, so you might as well just sit back and look pretty, is basically what he's telling her to do. Now, at that point, I'm like, no. Sorry, uncle, I am not just going to sit back and look pretty and just not do anything, right? No. It reminds me of what he's doing is I had a teacher in my shop class in high school that we had a shop class and there was like 3 of us girls and he never had any girls that really wanted to do anything in the shop class. So it was pretty misogynistic. He'd just be like, well, if you ladies just want to stand in the corner and just hold the wood for the men, then we'll just come and get you when we need something. That's pretty much his mentality and it drove me crazy. And I was like, no, I'm not going to sit here and do nothing for 45 minutes a day while you guys like make stuff. So I grabbed a bandsaw and taught myself how to make something. And they were like, oh. But that's what happened. Because I was like, we're not just going to sit here. So I kind of get that Lena feels the same way as him in this moment, right? He's like, don't you think it's impossible and cowardly? And Lena's like, no, the cowardly thing is not changing. The cowardly thing is not trying. Like, if we just accept that we can only run away and accept this world, like, well, there's nothing we can do, there's no change we can make, then nothing is going to change. And she's like, I can't live with myself like that. And I love the juxtaposition of how she's hearing Theo's like lecture in her head. Meanwhile, the lady on the announcement is talking about there's no human fatalities, the combat's highly advanced, the ethically responsible drones. Like, we hear that same speech from the first episode, that it's just been going on and on, the same speech. And we juxtapose that, the ethically responsible drones with 0 fatalities on our side, and then deaths of millions over the last 9 years. So you have that juxtaposition where Lena is realizing that on her side, there are 0 fatalities. But over there are millions of fatalities. And how if she doesn't try to change something and she doesn't try to do something, then nothing is going to change. Her side will remain stagnant and this will just keep on piling and piling up. Like in the Spearhead unit, they say that there has been 561 deaths in 5 years in that one unit alone. And that's absolutely insane that Sheen remembers every single one of them and has been collecting the tags and merits for each and every one of them. That is so baffling to me. I mean, I believe it, but it's just crazy it's been that many. So yeah, and Lena's just like, I can't take it anymore. And that's why she runs away. And she's like, you're not cut out for that job. And she's like, I refuse. And then she activates it and just talks to Sheen. I love that we're at the War Casualties Cemetery. And now the War Casualties Cemetery is seemingly for the victims, the Alban victims from the beginning of the war. Like before they did the whole proclamation and before they set up the walls and before they started isolating the others in the camps to fight the wars instead of them. So what's fascinating here symbolically is you have this big giant war memorial where there's all these names of Albans who died that first short amount of time before this proclamation. But then yet Sheen's like, none of us over here on this side, after they started the 86th Division, we don't get burials. We don't get remembered. We're forgotten. And that's it. And so Sheen, as the Undertaker, he's like, my job is to shepherd them all together, take them with me until I meet my end. And that's what's so sad, is that Sheen very much tells her that he expects to die. He expects it's going to happen. He just hopes that it happens at the very end when the others are either gone or they don't have to fight anymore. But Sheen seems to has fully come to accept that he is going to die. He is not going to make it past the war. Which is absolutely heartbreaking, right? Absolutely heartbreaking. So yeah, and she has this conversation with him and apologizes, and she wants to know his name. And I'm glad he told her the names, because at first, oh my God, at first I thought he was not going to tell her the names, and I was like, come on now, you got to do this. And he finally agrees to. And she's like, it was rude not to ask. And then they go through why about the processors. Most processors die within a year. And she's like, but it's cowardly. She's like, and I was too. So tell me your names. I'm tired of being cowardly. I love Lena. She's great. She's a fantastic character. And I love that she's not deterred. I love that she doesn't like go through this, oh no, what if my best friend and my uncle are right? No, she's got conviction. And she's like, son of a bitch, I'm going to do things my way. She's got Limp Bizkit playing in the background. It's a great time. And then I like that Sheen waits. And he's just like, Kirschblut was Kai Tania, the girl who died yesterday. And I love that she like just drops down, starts writing in her book. I was like, girl, I hope you brought a pen. He's like, werewolf, our XO. Okay, what does he say there? He says, werewolf, our XO is Raiden Shuga. I don't know what XO means. I don't understand what XO is. That's interesting. I guess maybe second in command. Laughing Fox is Theodo Rika. Snow Witch, not Snow Wolf. There we go. I would say it's Anju Emma. Okay. We have Snow Witch. That's the next one. And then what else do we have? We said Gunslinger is Karina Kukamila. What a name, right? She's Gunslinger. All right. Got that one. Kukamila. And then Black Dog is Dia Irma. Okay, so they're not related, but they just seem like they are. Okay, so then Falk is Haruto. Okay, Falk is Haruto. Okay. Got that one. Fafner is Lewis. All right. Fafner is Lewis. And then we have Helianthus. Helianthus is it Toma? I think so. I think it's Toma. Huckleberry's handle would just be Huckleberry. Yep, Toma. Okay. And so then she writes all the names down, like keeps as he's going. He doesn't say his name until the very end when she asks for it, right? He kind of like tries to avoid that and saying it to her. And she's just sitting there. I like that she had left her cap and her bag behind to write all the names. Okay. So we have all of the names there. So we have Toma. Chisei is one of them. And Corrado. So we have Corrado and Chisei. We don't know which names they are. We just know Corrado. And I wonder if Chisei is the one with black hair. We don't know their names. We know that Cat9 is Hasig. And we have March Hare is like Lena, maybe. Mikami is Lucania. There's Lafette. There's something else. Gladiator is Oki, and Angus is Joe. So I'm assuming that the other ones that we don't have the names for are probably not going to be as important right now. That may change, but if they are important, I think their names are going to be changed. So the person there with the glasses, the little doodly thing there, are they the red-haired one that's Shin's brother that's in the OP with the glasses? I want to go back when we get that flashback at the very end, right? I want to go back and see that. But yes. So he says Major Melise. I was like, I like that Sheen is a gentleman. He's like, I'm not going to call you Lena. I'm just going to call you Major Melise. If he calls her Lena at some point, my heart aflutter. And she's like, it's okay. So then she wants to, she's like, leaving Kaya's name behind. We carve her name to a fragment of the Juggernaut, so that the last of us to survive would take the others to their final destination. It's really sad when Sheen's like, I'm always the last. Like he's the Undertaker to take them on, right? I'm wondering if his brother was the Undertaker too, if that was the thing. She's like, you've been doing it for 5 years. How many people have died? And that's when he says 561. And I remember them all. And she's like, so that's why you're the Undertaker. And he says that's part of it. He's like, and she says, I never faced the people I let die. I just felt bad about it. And then she says she's sorry. So that's when he's like, do you want to talk to them right now? And so then we cut back to her talking to all of them. And I like how they're all just sitting around looking towards Theo and Sheen and Raiden, like waiting to hear what they all say. And so I like Theo's the one that stands up and talks to her first and explains to her about the Alban commander, a weirdo who said it wasn't right to make the 86 fight alone. He stayed and they died, being the rear guard of the processor. Now, they say they, so I don't know if that means that it's a man or woman that was the Alban that stayed behind, because they say they, like they're being non-binary. So I assumed it was a man, but I assumed the Fox commander was a man, but it might not be the case. Maybe it was a woman. Maybe they're non-binary. Maybe it doesn't matter. But they all agree that as long as you're inside the walls, you are not our equal. And I think that the point of this episode is that it is idealistic to think that we're all equal in this. We're all like hold hands, sing kumbaya. We all live under the same moon and stars. But as these last few episodes have shown, no, that is not the case. They are not equal. They should be treated equal because they're all humans. But they are, as Annette said, living in very different worlds. Annette and the uncle want to run away from the problems and not change anything. But they both understand that, one, the 86 are different from them. They're fighting the wars that they're not fighting. They're living in completely different conditions. They are not equals. They don't get the creme caramel that Annette and the people inside the walls get. That's not possible for them. And then the uncle is like, yeah, no, the Republic is not living up to the standard it once was. But both of them have resigned themselves to the fact that there's nothing they can do, which is interesting because the uncle's in a pretty damn high place of power. So I'm like, I don't know. But they both want to run away from the problem and just be like, well, in 2 years it'll be done, so what does it matter? Whereas Lena's like, no, I want to change things. But I do like that we're saying that Lena is in a place of privilege. So I'm hoping that she uses that place of privilege to her advantage. And Raiden even says, like, send me the maps. If you're going to use that privilege, let's go. And so he's like, I'm sorry for the way I acted. Karina, she doesn't seem very happy. She's the only one that seems not happy that they're all talking to Lena, but she can't really do much about it at this point. I like that Raiden's very transparent. And he's like, yeah, we called you a wannabe saint and a hypocrite pig, but also you need to not be in this job because I don't know what good you think it's going to do getting to know us. Like, we don't want to think that you're equal to us. You're an idiot who's stomping on our faces while lecturing us with platitudes. He's like, it won't change no matter what happens. He's like, as long as, if you're self-righteous, then it's going to be very apparent. Because he's like, you can't treat us as if, you can't treat us as if we're all in this together. Because no, at the end of the day, you get to go inside your walls where you're safe. We do not. So he's like, don't lecture us and be self-righteous. I like that Raiden says it in such just a very matter-of-fact, direct way. But there's also like this weird sense of care behind it. He's like, oh, we'll keep talking with you to kill time. But personally, I don't recommend it. You're not cut out to be a handler. And there's like a little bit of like concern and care in his voice, being like, this is going to be too much for you. And I'm like, I want her to change his mind. She kind of laughs. She kind of laughs at Raiden like, wow, you are just like my uncle and my best friend, trying to convince me to quit. And I think that Lena laughs because she's like, that shows you care. Like, you care about me like they do. So that's why you want me to quit. Well, I'm not going to let you fool me. It's like, go Lena, go girl, go Vladilena. And then he just jokes. And he's like, fine, then send the map. And then they all so we have Lekka, Kino, and she says, thank you. And that's when she talks to Sheen and she says, I haven't heard your name. And then he says, oh, well, it's Shinai Nozen. Okay, here we go. And then she says, wait a minute, Nozen. She says, do you know Shorei Nozen? So we have Shorei, which is his brother. Okay. And the moment she says Shorei, I love that he just stops and the camera, I love he stops and the camera keeps going. That was such a good moment. And he's just standing there. I love he's standing there in the empty hallway with the moonlight shining from all the windows. And just right outside the damn door is the pig, the mannequin with the pig against the mural. Like right there, right? And he's like, his personal name was Doulahan. And his mark was a headless knight. Ooh. So it was like, I guess it was that processor name, Doulahan. And it was a headless knight. Like acting without a face, maybe. Maybe that was it. And so then the room spins a little bit. And Sheen, like, has his eyes there. I want to get, like, some still frames of this and see. So we have a man with red hair, like Shanks from One Piece. His face is scribbled out there, which is interesting. The eyes are scribbled out. I'm like gonna like quickly clip on this. So yeah, the eyes are scribbled out, and it's like, I'm like, are they in the internment camps there? It's interesting. Why can't we see the eyes? Huh. And then we have, the glasses. And then the glasses, and we see the two of them walking around in a city, and there's some Alban people behind them walking around. So is it like going back to the early days before the war started, and they were in the city with the Alban people, and they're like looking in the shop window, we see him with the glasses, and then like it shows the eyes being scribbled out. Interesting. And like, is this when they were all outside, they weren't in the internment camps, were they looking up at the sky at Legion coming in? Ooh, like this was before all that went down. And then Sheen, thinking. And then we see them looking, they have glasses, watching, and then Sheen is drawing a knight with glasses that's basically Shorey, and he says the Skull Knight. And his whole thing is a headless knight is his thing. Maybe he drew inspiration from Sheen. Okay. And then we see somebody falling to the ground and being like strangled. Huh. And we see Sheen with the smile and the shadow. He's my brother. Huh. So it seems like whatever happened started out where they're brothers and they had a great relationship, but then there was a fight because the last shot we see is somebody being strangled. We don't know if it's Sheen, we don't know if it's Shorey, we don't know if it's someone else being strangled by either one of them. Huh. But he's the one with glasses. He's the one that's in her book that she's drawn. She knows him. So I'm wondering if he's the one that saved her, maybe on the battlefield, and her father was like mortally wounded or something, and that's how she knows him, because she talked about a member of 86 saving her. So I wonder if Shorey saved her, and that's how she's going to have a connection to Sheen. Huh, right? And that seemed like just a straightforward episode, but here we are an hour into discussion. I have a feeling that's what this whole series is going to be like. But wow, that was a really good episode. Glad we got to break it down. Feel a lot better after breaking it down. But now I'm a sucker for red-haired characters, so we'll see, right? We'll see. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with episode 5 of 86.